Watch to the end. In this video, you will hear 3 stories. The last one will shock you. This story was classified in the USA because no one returned from the cave, the mystery of which shocks you. Watch to the end. After watching, you will cry. Because this story about the deaths of hundreds of people is based on real events and has shocked millions of people. It will tell you about the dangers of unexplored lands and change your ideas about modern caves. Kashkulak Cave. Plunging into darkness. The disappearance. In the summer of 1999, 2 young travelers, Jake and Charlie, ventured into the cave. They were thrill seekers, attracted by the cave's sinister reputation and promise of adventure. Armed with flashlights, ropes, and a camera, they disappeared into the darkness. The connection was abruptly cut off, the equipment turned off, and they disappeared. Kashkulak Cave, which received its second name Black Devil, terrified tourists after this incident because of the legend of shamans who performed sacrifices. The entrance to the cave, which was a jagged limestone maw, seemed to be breathing a faint rhythmic hissing echoed through the surrounding forest. The cave floor is littered with bones of sacrificial animals, trampled into clay, and charcoal from sacrificial fires. The walls are covered with fossilized soot. In addition, there is another reason why many travelers associate this place with a horror movie, the intricate maze that stretches along the slopes of the Kuznetsk Altai. Today, when traveling to Caucasia, supporters of extreme tourism will see the altars where sacrifices were previously performed. Locals called this place the Black Devil, where according to them, the spirits of the underworld roamed freely, guarding ancient secrets and punishing those who dared to disturb their sleep. Before visiting the unique stone corridor, it is necessary to remember the danger. The people who visited the second tier in Kashkulak Cave are missing. If a person was among the lucky ones who managed to get out alive, he went crazy or passed away for an unknown reason. The parents' attempt. A week passed, and their parents, desperate, set out in search of them, without warning anyone or taking any equipment with them, except, as it would later become known, a flashlight, a spinning top, and a shotgun. On the same day, according to eyewitnesses, they also went missing. A search party. A couple of days later, an acquaintance of the missing learns about this situation from friends who live there and reports it to the police. A search party is sent after them. They found Charlie's torn shoes and hoodie not far from the entrance. The cloth was damp, as if soaked in something other than water. The air grew colder as they moved on, their flashlights casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. After that, they go deeper, and all but one person named Mike goes missing. The connection is lost. The first survivor. A day later, in the dark evening, Mike comes out of the cave and tries to strangle the man, but they manage to neutralize him. Mike was rushed to the hospital, but having suffered amnesia during the attack, he could not remember a single detail. The doctors thought that after a while, he would be able to remember at least some significant details. But soon he started to lose his mind. Mike was mumbling incomprehensible sounds, as if he was speechless. Day after day, doctors tried to figure out his condition. He had no physical injuries, but his mind was a maze of scattered memories and incoherent ramblings. A week after his rescue, Mike attacked a nurse, grabbed her by the throat, and shouted, "This is it!" He was depressed and restrained, but the incident shocked the hospital staff. His eyes, once full of life, now looked empty and haunted. He could stare at the ceiling for hours, muttering to himself, "This is it, this is it." Panic attacks became more frequent. Breathing became difficult and intermittent. Doctors connected him to artificial ventilation, but after that his condition continued to deteriorate. The doctors couldn't explain his behavior. One night, when the nurses left the room for a while, Mike reached for the ventilator, staring at the camera on the ceiling. His trembling fingers found the tubes, and his breathing became ragged. The steady beeping of the machine became intermittent, then stopped. His lips moved, uttering words that sent a chill through everyone who watched the recording later. A second before the last loss of consciousness, which will level him with the earth, he says, "This is it." Since then, the entrance to that cave has been strictly closed for several years. Rumors. A few years later, the scientists managed to find another excerpt from the recording, which showed a frame with a bloody inscription, "This is it," inside the cave. The first expedition. In the summer of 2003, a group of people of different nationalities gathered at the entrance to the cave, with the permission of the government. Among them were Dr. Hanna Petrova, a geologist who studies the effects of climate change on cave systems. Mark Harris, a journalist, decided to reveal the truth about the gloomy reputation of the cave. Sarah and Tom, a pair of thrill-seeking tourists who have heard about the sinister history of the cave. Ivan, a local guide who claimed to know the secrets of the cave, but seemed worried about the upcoming expedition. Dr. Raj Patel, a psychologist who studies the effects of extreme conditions on the human psyche. This story became available thanks to cloud storage from cameras involved in the search for the cave's secrets. Mark Harris, a journalist, was determined to get to the bottom of the truth. He spoke in detail about every detail of the expedition, interviewing local residents and exploring the history of the cave. But the more he learned, the more he realized how little he understood. The young man's recklessness and last words all pointed to something beyond human comprehension. His articles about the cave became more and more speculative, which earned him both recognition and ridicule. He wanted to go there himself to find out what had happened. Dr. Raj Patel, a psychologist, began to study the psychological effects of extreme conditions, but his research took a dark turn. He came to believe that the cave was not just a physical place, but also a manifestation of humanity's deepest fears. His colleagues dismissed his theories as delusional, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled on something. Dr. Hanna Petrova, a geologist, began to question everything she knew about geology, climate change, and the natural world. Nightmares about the suffocating darkness of the cave tormented her in her sleep, and she often woke up in a cold sweat, gasping for air. She wanted to deal with this once and for all. Their goal was to explore the depths of the cave, document its unique features, and for some, uncover the truth about the disappearances that have plagued the cave for decades. Armed with state-of-the-art equipment, they entered the cave, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. Descent to the Black Devil. As they went deeper, the air grew colder and the walls closed in around them. The floor was slippery with moisture, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed in the distance. As the group moved forward, they began to notice strange things whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, shadows that moved on their own, and the pervasive feeling that they were being watched. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked in a trembling voice. "It's just the wind," Tom replied, though there was no confidence in his voice. "Doctor." Petrova adjusted her equipment, frowning as the readings changed dramatically. "Something is interfering with the operation of the devices," she said. "It looks like the cave itself is alive." Flood. Their exploration was suddenly interrupted by a sudden crash. A flash flood caused by heavy rains upstream overwhelmed the cave, sweeping away their supplies and cutting off their exit. The group was forced to retreat deeper into the cave in search of higher ground. "We need to find another way out," Mark said in a strained voice. "If we stay here, we're finished." Ivan nodded, his face pale. "There's another entrance, but it's deeper in the cave. It's dangerous." A breakdown. As they moved deeper, their equipment began to fail. The flashlights blinked and went out, the radios made only static, and even the clock stopped working. The cave seemed to actively resist their presence, as if it were alive and hostile. "It's unnatural," Dr. Patel said softly. "There's something here, something we don't understand." Whisper. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to come from all directions at the same time. It was a low, guttural chant that sent chills down everyone's spine. Sarah clutched Tom's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "What is it? What is it?" she whispered. "I do not know," Tom replied in a barely audible voice. "But we need to keep moving." Discovery. Deeper into the cave, they found a room filled with strange symbols carved into the walls and the remains of countless sacrifices. The air was saturated with the smell of decay, and the whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves. "I know," Ivan said in a trembling voice. "This is a place where shamans perform their rituals. According to the rumors, the Black Devil is coming here." Choice. When they explored the room, Sarah and Tom recognized the skeletons of Jake and Charlie in one of the altars. The remains of the bones seemed to indicate that something had torn one of them to pieces, and the other had only a fractured spine, but both had black skeletons. Above that altar was the very inscription, "This is it," which suddenly began to bleed. Mark and Raj decided to examine the inscription. When they got closer, they saw that the inscription was bleeding. Sarah said in a tearful voice, "This place is not what I'm used to. We should leave." I have a home. I have a family waiting for me. I want to live, not remain the history of this place. I don't care. I'm leaving. Dr. Raj interrupted Sarah. Everything will be fine. Stop whining. It's just someone's prank. Mysticism does not exist. You impose fear on yourself. Hannah began to panic, and in a broken, crying voice, she said, I can't stay here either. I'm leaving with Sarah. Suddenly, the exit from the cave was covered with stones, but there were 2 additional ones. Ivan said, the right one leads to the exit. Suddenly, a shout of, this is it, came from the left exit. The whole team screamed in fear, run! Sarah's last look. While running, Sarah stopped and shouted, we have guns! Who are we afraid of? We need to find out who is there. What if he knows the secrets of this cave? The team stopped, and at that moment, a large, heavy rock fell on Sarah and blocked the passage. Tom screamed in a desperate voice, having lost consciousness and lost his pulse. Raj shouted, he needs water urgently, and started doing compressions. Search for water. Ivan replied that Sarah had all the water. The nearest one is about 200 meters away. Mark, shall we go? Ivan and Mark moved to the water. They were separated from the rest of the team, but all the survivors also had access to the exit from the cave. The water was close. Mark could hear the faint trickle echoing through the narrow passage. He and Ivan moved cautiously, their flashlights flickering weakly against the damp walls. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the whispers that had haunted them since they entered the cave seemed to grow louder, more urgent. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that they were being led somewhere, or to something. Do you hear that? Ivan whispered, stopping abruptly. His flashlight beam trembled as it swept across the jagged walls. Mark froze. The whispers had coalesced into a single, guttural voice, chanting something in a language he couldn't understand. It was coming from ahead, where the water was. His throat tightened. We need to keep moving, he said, though every instinct screamed at him to turn back. They pressed on, the passage narrowing until they were forced to crouch. The sound of water grew louder, and soon they emerged into a small chamber. A shallow pool of water glistened in the center, fed by a thin stream trickling down from a crack in the ceiling. But it wasn't the water that made Mark's blood run cold. Mysterious water. The walls of the chamber were covered in the same strange symbols they'd seen earlier, but these were glowing faintly, as if lit from within. The air smelled metallic, like blood, and the chanting was deafening now, reverberating through the chamber like a living thing. This isn't right, Ivan stammered, backing away. We need to go back. Mark hesitated. He couldn't explain it, but he felt drawn to the pool, as if something in the water was calling to him. He knelt at the edge, his flashlight reflecting off the surface. For a moment, he thought he saw something moving beneath the water, a shadow, writhing and twisting like smoke. Mark, don't, Ivan started, but it was too late. Mark reached into the pool, his fingers brushing against something cold and slimy. He recoiled, but not before he felt Ida's sharp, searing pain in his hand. He yanked his arm back, staring in horror at the blackened veins spreading up his wrist. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, and the water began to churn, bubbling violently. Run! Ivan screamed, grabbing Mark's arm and dragging him back toward the passage. They stumbled through the narrow tunnel, the walls seeming to close in around them. Mark's vision blurred, his hand throbbing with a pain that radiated up his arm. He could feel something moving inside him, something alive, spreading through his veins like poison. When they finally burst back into the main chamber, the others were gone. Ivan realized that he did not know the cave map well enough. The altar with the bleeding inscription was now surrounded by a pool of dark liquid, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. Mark collapsed to his knees, clutching his arm. Where are they? He gasped. Ivan didn't answer. He was staring at the altar, his face pale. We're too late, he whispered. It's already begun. Back in the chamber where Sarah and Tom had been trapped, Dr. Petrova and Dr. Patel were frantically trying to revive Tom. His pulse was weak, his breathing shallow. Raj's hands trembled as he performed chest compressions, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. We need to get him out of here, Hannah said, her voice tight with fear. If we stay, we're all going to die. And go where? Raj snapped. The exit's blocked and Mark and Ivan are gone. We're trapped. As if in response, the whispers returned, louder than ever. They seemed to come from the walls themselves, a cacophony of voices speaking in tongues neither of them could understand. Hannah's flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. No, 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 she muttered, slapping the flashlight against her palm. It sparked to life for a moment, illuminating something that made her blood run cold. The walls were moving. Not just the shadows, the stone itself seemed to ripple, as if alive. The symbols carved into the walls pulsed with a faint, sickly light, and the air grew colder, heavier. Raj froze, his hand still on Tom's chest. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Hannah nodded, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "We need to move. Now." They dragged Tom to his feet, his body limp and unresponsive. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the walls began to close in around them. The chamber was shrinking, the ceiling lowering as if the cave itself was trying to crush them. "This way!" Raj shouted, spotting a narrow passage they hadn't noticed before. They stumbled toward it, the walls pressing in on all sides. The passage was tight, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through, but it was their only hope. As they emerged into another chamber, they found themselves face to face with Mark and Ivan. Mark was slumped against the wall, his arm blackened and swollen, his breathing ragged. Ivan was kneeling beside him, his face a mask of terror. "What happened?" Hannah demanded, her voice shaking. "The water," Mark gasped. "There's something in the water. It's inside me." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The walls of the chamber cracked, and the whispers turned to screams. The air was filled with the sound of stone grinding against stone, and the ceiling began to collapse. "Run!" Ivan shouted, dragging Mark to his feet. Suddenly, Tom got caught on the walls. The team had to leave him and run without him. At the same moment, Tom's pulse returned, but he was still unconscious. They ran, the cave collapsing around them. The passage twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the earth. The air grew hotter, the walls slick with moisture, and then, suddenly, they were in a vast, cavernous chamber. Last minute. The chamber was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls were covered in glowing symbols, and the air was thick with the stench of sulfur. In the center of the chamber was a massive, pulsating mass of black tendrils, writhing and twisting like a living thing. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from the very fabric of reality. "This is it," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible over the noise. "This is what they were trying to warn us about." The tendrils surged toward them, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Ivan was the first to fall, his body consumed by the black mass. Raj tried to fight back, but it was no use. The tendrils wrapped around him, pulling him into the darkness. Hannah and Mark were the last to fall. As the tendrils closed in around her, Hannah realized the truth. The cave wasn't just a place, it was alive, and it had been waiting for them. The last escape. Tom's eyes fluttered open, his head pounding as if it had been split in two. The air was thick and cold, and the faint glow of the cave's symbols cast an eerie light across the chamber. He was alone. The others were gone. Mark, Ivan, Hannah, Raj, Sarah, all of them. The last thing he remembered was the rock falling, Sarah's scream, and then nothing. He tried to sit up, but his body felt heavy, unresponsive. His throat was dry, his lips cracked. He needed water. He needed to get out. Groaning, he forced himself to his feet, his legs trembling beneath him. The chamber was silent, but the whispers were still there, faint and distant, like a memory he couldn't quite grasp. "Hello!" he called out, his voice echoing off the walls. There was no response. Tom stumbled forward, his flashlight flickering weakly. The passage ahead was narrow, the walls slick with moisture. He had no idea where he was or how long he'd been unconscious, but he knew one thing. He had to get out of this cave. As he moved deeper into the passage, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from all around him, a chorus of voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand. He tried to ignore them, focusing on the faint glimmer of light ahead. It had to be the exit. But as he drew closer, the light began to shift, flickering like a dying flame. The passage widened into a chamber, and Tom froze. The walls were covered in the same glowing symbols he'd seen before, but these were different, more intricate, more alive. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the ground beneath his feet was soft, almost spongy. In the center of the chamber was a pool of water, its surface perfectly still. Tom hesitated, his thirst overwhelming his fear. He knelt at the edge of the pool, cupping the water in his hands. It was cold, almost freezing, but he drank anyway. the liquid soothing his parched throat. As he drank, he noticed something strange. The water wasn't clear, it was dark, almost black, and it seemed to move on its own, swirling and twisting like smoke. He pulled back, his heart racing. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, and the ground beneath him began to tremble. "No," Tom whispered, scrambling to his feet. "No, no, no." The pool erupted, tendrils of black liquid surging into the air. They twisted and writhed, forming into shapes that seemed almost human. Tom stumbled backward, his flashlight slipping from his grasp. The tendrils lunged at him, wrapping around his legs and pulling him toward the pool. He screamed, clawing at the ground, but it was no use. The tendrils were too strong, their grip unrelenting. He could feel them crawling up his body, cold and slimy, wrapping around his arms, his chest, his throat. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from inside his own head. "This is it," one of the voices whispered, its tone almost mocking. "This is it!" Tom's vision blurred as the tendrils dragged him into the pool. The water was freezing, suffocating, and the last thing he saw before the darkness swallowed him was the glowing symbols on the walls, pulsing with a faint, sickly light. Conclusion: a few hours later, silence reigned in the cave. Since that day, the government has stopped keeping the cave closed, believing that all these stories are a bad fantasy. There were no signs of the expedition, no traces of the horrors that unfolded inside. This case remained classified and anyone could enter the cave. Scientific studies suggested that there was a dangerous gas in this cave, which acts as a severe psychotropic drug, causing hallucinations in everyone in the cave, soon leading to death or loss of reason, while another gas, according to scientists, dissolved the human body after a day in the cave. One way or another, we can only think, after this expedition, hundreds of lonely people went to this cave for the last time in search of new sensations. Her difficult position in the middle of the forest obscured any information about the people who entered it. But deep in the heart of the cave, something stirred. The black mass pulsed, its tendrils writhing in the darkness. And then, slowly, it began to move toward the surface. Above, the world continued to turn, unaware of the darkness that lay beneath. But soon, it would know. Soon, it would all be over. And somewhere, in the depths of the cave, a single voice whispered, "This is it." Conclusion: visiting caves has long been a favorite hobby for tourists who prefer to explore the sights presented by nature. Few adventurous people will refuse to visit the mysterious canyons, where you can see not only amazing formations, but also hear from others an exciting story that sometimes scares. Think again before visiting mystical places?
This classified story about the 1,960 dive to the bottom of the Mariana Trench shocked millions of people. Watch to the end. This story about the sinking of Walsh and Picard is based on real events and has shocked millions of people. It will show you about the political problems that have arisen, the dangers of unexplored edges, and will change your ideas about the Mariana Trench and humanity. This animal at the bottom of the Mariana Trench shocked everyone. The depths of mystery. The Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the world's oceans, has always been a place of mystery and fear. For centuries, sailors told tales of monstrous creatures lurking in its abyssal darkness, waiting to drag ships and their crews into the void. By 1960, science had begun to peel back the layers of these myths, but the trench still held secrets that no one could have imagined. It was in this year that U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh and Swiss oceanographer Jacques Picard embarked on a historic dive aboard the bathyscaphe Trieste, a vessel designed by Jacques' father, Auguste Picard. Their mission was to reach the bottom of the Challenger Deep, the deepest known point in the trench. What they discovered there would change the course of history and plunge them into a web of intrigue, danger, and unimaginable wonder. Chapter 1. The Descent. The Trieste was a marvel of engineering, a massive, balloon-like submersible designed to withstand the crushing pressures of the deep ocean. As Walsh and Picard began their descent, the world above faded into darkness. The only sound was the creaking of the hull as the pressure increased with every meter they sank. "Pressure readings are holding steady," Walsh reported, his voice calm but tinged with excitement. "We're approaching 8,000 meters. Picard, seated beside him, adjusted the instruments. "Everything looks good. Let's hope the legends about this place are just that, legends. As they descended further, the sonar began to pick up strange readings. Unusual shapes appeared on the screen, too large and irregular to be rocks. Walsh frowned. "What do you make of that?" Picard leaned closer. "I'm not sure. It could be a geological formation, but it's moving." Chapter 2. The Discovery. At 10,916 meters, the Trieste touched down on the ocean floor. The exterior lights illuminated a barren, alien landscape. But as the beams swept across the seabed, they revealed something that made both men gasp. A massive creature, unlike anything ever documented, lay partially buried in the sediment. It was over 20 meters long, with a serpentine body covered in bioluminescent scales. Its head was crowned with long, tendril-like appendages that glowed faintly in the darkness. The creature's eyes, large and lidless, seemed to stare directly at them. "My God," Walsh whispered. "What is that?" Picard, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear, began recording. This could be the discovery of the century. A living relic, something that survived here for millions of years. But as they watched, the creature stirred. Its massive body shifted, sending clouds of sediment swirling around the Trieste. The submersible rocked violently, and alarms blared as the pressure hull groaned under the strain. "We need to get out of here," Walsh said, his voice tight with urgency. Chapter 3. The Race Begins. Back on the surface, news of the discovery spread like wildfire. Scientists, military officials, and corporate executives all wanted a piece of the creature. The U.S. Navy, eager to maintain control, classified the mission. But leaks were inevitable. In Washington, D.C., Cold War tensions were at their peak. The Soviet Union, hearing rumors of the discovery, began planning their own expedition. Meanwhile, a powerful biotech corporation, Oceanic Dynamics, saw the creature as the key to revolutionary medical breakthroughs and immense profits. Walsh and Picard found themselves caught in the middle. The Navy pressured them to keep quiet, while Oceanic Dynamics offered them millions for exclusive rights to the creature. Picard, driven by scientific curiosity, wanted to study the creature openly. Walsh, a loyal Navy officer, was torn between duty and the desire to protect the discovery from exploitation. Chapter 4. The Environmental Threat. As the world's attention turned to the Mariana Trench, the fragile ecosystem of the deep ocean came under threat. Fishing trawlers, oil rigs, and research vessels descended on the area, disrupting the delicate balance of life in the depths. The creature, which Picard had named Abyssus magnifica, began to exhibit strange behavior. It became more aggressive, attacking submersibles and even surfacing briefly near a fishing vessel. Scientists theorized that the increased human activity was disturbing its habitat, but no one could predict the full consequences. Meanwhile, environmental activists warned of the dangers of exploiting the deep ocean. "We're playing with forces we don't understand," one activist declared. "If we're not careful, we could unleash something far worse than we can imagine." Chapter 5. Personal Conflicts. The pressure began to take its toll on Walsh and Picard. Walsh, haunted by the creature's eerie gaze, began to question the morality of their mission. "What if we're not meant to disturb it?" he asked Picard one night. "What if it's a guardian of some kind?" Picard, ever the rationalist, dismissed the idea. "It's just an animal, Don. A remarkable one, yes, but still an animal. We have a duty to science to study it." Their disagreements grew more heated, fueled by exhaustion and fear. Walsh's military training clashed with Picard's scientific idealism, creating a rift between the two men. Chapter 6. Myths come to life. As the creature's attacks became more frequent, ancient legends began to resurface. Fishermen spoke of a leviathan that guarded the depths, while indigenous communities warned of a sea god that would punish humanity for its arrogance. Picard scoffed at the superstitions, but Walsh couldn't shake the feeling that there was truth to the stories. "What if they're right?" he asked. "What if we've awakened something that should have stayed hidden?" Chapter 7. Technological Progress. New technologies played a dual role in the unfolding drama. Advanced submersibles and sonar systems allowed scientists to study the creature in unprecedented detail, but they also enabled military and corporate interests to pursue it more aggressively. Oceanic Dynamics, developed a massive underwater drone designed to capture the creature, while the U.S. Navy deployed a fleet of armed submersibles to protect their interests. The race to control Abyssus Magnifica escalated, with each side pushing the limits of technology and ethics. Chapter 8. The Final Confrontation. The climax came when the Soviet Union launched their own expedition, sparking a tense standoff in the depths of the trench. Walsh and Picard, now working together despite their differences, realized that the only way to prevent disaster was to protect the creature from all sides. In a daring maneuver, they used the Trieste to lure the creature away from the conflict zone, guiding it to a remote part of the trench. As they did, they witnessed something extraordinary. The creature released a cloud of bioluminescent particles that seemed to calm the surrounding waters. "It's communicating," Picard realized. "It's trying to tell us something." Chapter 9. The Aftermath. The world was captivated by the discovery of Abyssus Magnifica. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and television programs were filled with sensational headlines. Leviathan of the Deep found. Scientists unearth ancient sea monster. Cold War tensions rise over ocean discovery. The creature became a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that even in the 20th century, there were still mysteries that defied explanation. For Walsh and Picard, life after the dive was anything but normal. They were hailed as heroes in some circles and vilified in others. Environmentalists praised them for protecting the creature, while military and corporate interests accused them of jeopardizing national security and economic progress. The two men found themselves thrust into the spotlight, their every move scrutinized by the media. Picard, ever the scientist, was eager to continue studying Abyssus Magnifica. He published a groundbreaking paper detailing the creature's biology and behavior, sparking a wave of interest in deep-sea exploration. But he also faced criticism from colleagues who accused him of sensationalism. "This isn't about fame," Picard insisted. "This is about understanding our planet." Walsh, on the other hand, struggled to reconcile his military background with his newfound role as an environmental advocate. He was haunted by the creature's gaze, which seemed to pierce through the Trieste's hull and into his soul. It wasn't just an animal, he confided to Picard. It was something more. Chapter 10. The Global Response. The discovery of Abyssus Magnifica had far-reaching implications. Governments around the world began to reevaluate their approach to ocean exploration and conservation. The United Nations convened an emergency session to discuss the protection of the Mariana Trench and other vulnerable ecosystems. The U.S. and Soviet Union, despite their Cold War rivalry, agreed to a temporary truce, recognizing the need for international cooperation. But not everyone was on board. Oceanic Dynamics, the biotech corporation that had sought to exploit the creature, launched a covert operation to capture Abyssus Magnifica. They believed that the creature's unique biology held the key to revolutionary medical treatments and immense profits. Their plan involved a state-of-the-art submersible equipped with tranquilizers and a reinforced containment unit. Meanwhile, indigenous communities from the Pacific Islands began to speak out. They shared ancient legends of a guardian of the deep, a being that protected the oceans from human greed. "The creature is not ours to take," one elder warned. "It is a part of the ocean, and the ocean is a part of us." Chapter 11. A New Mission. Walsh and Picard, realizing that their work was far from over, decided to return to the Mariana Trench. This time, their mission was not to explore, but to protect. They partnered with environmental organizations and indigenous leaders to establish a sanctuary around the Challenger Deep, ensuring that Abyssus Magnifica and its habitat would be preserved for future generations. The journey back to the trench was fraught with tension. The Trieste had been upgraded with new technology, but the risks were still immense. As they descended into the abyss, Walsh couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Do you think it remembers us?" he asked Picard. "I don't know," Picard replied, "but I do know that we owe it this. We owe it to the ocean." Chapter 12. The Encounter. When they reached the bottom, they found Abyssus Magnifica waiting for them. The creature's bioluminescent scales glowed softly in the darkness, casting an eerie light on the seabed. It moved gracefully, its tendrils swaying as if in greeting. Picard activated the Trieste, its recording equipment, capturing every detail of the encounter. Walsh, meanwhile, felt a profound sense of peace. "It's not a monster," he said. "It's beautiful." But their moment of awe was interrupted by an alarm. The sonar detected another submersible approaching Oceanic Dynamics vessel. The corporation had tracked their movements and was determined to capture the creature. Chapter 13. The Standoff. What followed was a tense underwater standoff. The Trieste positioned itself between Abyssus Magnifica and the corporate submersible, its lights flashing a warning. Walsh and Picard communicated with the other vessel, urging them to stand down. "This creature is not yours to take," Picard said over the radio. "It belongs to the ocean." The corporate team, however, was undeterred. They launched a tranquilizer dart, narrowly missing the creature. Abyssus Magnifica reacted with surprising intelligence, using its tendrils to deflect the dart and retreat into the darkness. Walsh, realizing that diplomacy had failed, made a bold decision. He activated the Trieste's emergency buoyancy system, causing the submersible to rise rapidly. The sudden movement created a shockwave that disoriented the corporate team, forcing them to abandon their mission. Chapter 14. A New Understanding. Back on the surface, Walsh and Picard were hailed as heroes once again. The failed corporate expedition sparked a public outcry, leading to stricter regulations on deep-sea exploration. Oceanic Dynamics faced legal consequences, and the sanctuary around the Mariana Trench was officially established. But for Walsh and Picard, the real victory was the newfound respect for the ocean and its mysteries. They had set out to explore the depths, and had instead discovered something far greater, a connection to the natural world that transcended science, politics, and profit. Epilogue. The legacy of the depths of the sea. Years later, the legacy of Walsh and Picard continued to live on. The reserve they helped create has become a model for ocean conservation, inspiring similar efforts around the world. The magnificent abyss remained a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that we still have a lot to learn about our planet. Walsh, now retired from the Navy, has dedicated his life to protecting the environment. "The ocean is our greatest treasure," he often said. "We must protect it, not only for our own sake, but also for the sake of the creatures who call it home." Picard continued his scientific work, mentoring a new generation of oceanographers. "The depths of the sea are the last frontier," he wrote in his memoirs. "This is a place of wonders, mysteries, and endless possibilities." This incident forced humanity to reconsider its relationship with the ocean. The United States and the Soviet Union signed a treaty to protect the Mariana Trench, while Oceanic Dynamics abandoned its plans to exploit the creature. Walsh and Picard, forever changed by their experiences, became advocates for ocean conservation. This creature, Abyssus Magnifica, remains a symbol of the mysteries that still lurk beneath the waves, and a reminder that some secrets are better left unsolved. His story has become a legend passed down from generation to generation, a testament to the power of discovery and the importance of humility in the face of the unknown. As Walsh later wrote in his diary, "We went to the bottom of the ocean to discover a monster. Instead, we found a mirror reflecting our own fears, ambitions, and the fragile beauty of the world we share."
You will not believe this story about the Bermuda Triangle, which was classified in the USA. Be sure to watch it to the end. In the end, you will learn shocking news that will have a huge impact on you. This story is based on real events and has shocked millions of Americans. Leviathan's Wake. Chapter 1. The Devil in the Deep. The Marlin, a rust-stained research vessel, cut through the pre-dawn fog of the Bermuda Triangle like a blade through silk. Aboard her, a team of scientists, thrill-seekers, and skeptics gathered on the deck, their faces lit by the eerie glow of sonar screens. Dr. Elias Vance, a disgraced marine biologist with a penchant for conspiracy theories, adjusted his glasses and pointed to the pulsing red blip on the monitor. "That's no shipwreck," he said. "That's something alive." The team. 1. Captain Kara Ruiz. A no-nonsense ex-Navy salvage expert with a prosthetic leg and a grudge against the ocean. 2. Finn Dawson. A cocky YouTuber, documentarian who cared more about clicks than truth. 3. Dr. Lien Nguyen. A skeptical oceanographer who thought Vance was a fraud. 4. Mateo Rojas. A deep-sea diver with a history of hallucinations and a secret. 5. Sophia West. A billionaire's daughter funding the expedition for reasons she wouldn't share. The first conflict. Within hours, tensions flared. "You're telling me you dragged us out here for a sea monster?" Lien scoffed, crossing her arms. "The triangle's just bad weather and methane pockets." "Then explain this." Vance shot back, slamming a photo on the table, a satellite image of a gigantic, serpentine shadow circling a sinking cargo ship. Finn grinned, already scripting his next viral video. "Dude, we're gonna be famous." Kara's grip tightened on the wheel. Or dead. The first twist. That night, the Marlin's engines died without warning. The crew rushed to the deck just in time to see the water part around them. Something massive glided beneath the hull, its scales reflecting moonlight like polished obsidian. Then the radio crackled to life with a distress call from 1945 Flight 19, the Lost Squadron, screaming about wings in the water. "That's impossible," Lien whispered. "Not if time doesn't work right down there," Mateo murmured, his eyes glazed. "It's been calling me for years." Before anyone could react, the ship lurched. Metal screamed as something rammed them from below. Finn's camera rolled as the deck tilted, capturing the moment a clawed, webbed hand the size of a car slammed onto the railing. Then the lights went out. The cliffhanger. In the darkness, Sophia's voice cut through the chaos. "It's not an animal, it's angry." And then from the depths below, something roared. Chapter 2. The Taken. The Marlin groaned as the creature's grip tightened around its hull, the sound of twisting metal screaming into the night. The crew stumbled in the pitch black, their flashlights cutting jagged beams through the fog. Then silence. The creature was gone. But something was wrong. 1. Mateo's visions were never hallucinations. Mateo collapsed against the railing, his breath ragged. "It's been talking to me," he whispered. "What the hell does that mean?" Finn demanded, camera still rolling. Mateo's pupils were dilated, his voice hollow. "The dreams. The voices. I thought I was crazy, but..." He yanked up his sleeve, revealing a bioluminescent scar in the shape of a spiraling vortex. "I was on a dive 3 years ago. Something touched me." Lien grabbed his arm, her scientific skepticism crumbling. "This is a brand. Like it marked you." A low, guttural hum vibrated through the ship's frame, a sound no animal on Earth could make. "It's back," Kara hissed. 2. Sophia's family curse. Sophia's hands shook as she pulled out a 1943 leather logbook from her waterproof satchel. "My great-grandfather's ship vanished here. So did my uncle's. And my cousin's." She flipped to a page, revealing a sketch of a massive, multi-eyed creature wrapped around a sinking vessel. "They weren't taken by storms. They were sacrificed." Finn's smirk vanished. Sacrificed to what? Before she could answer, the radio blared to life again, this time with a child's voice singing a haunting, distorted rendition of "My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean." 3. The truth about Flight 19. Vance's face went pale. He rewound the audio, isolating a subsonic frequency beneath the singing. "This isn't a distress call. It's a recording." Then a new voice cut in. A man, screaming. "They're not planes, they're skin. They peel off the..." Static. Lien's blood ran cold. They weren't lost. They were harvested. The second attack. The deck exploded upward as a tentacle thicker than a redwood erupted from the water, slamming into Finn and sending him flying overboard. "Finn!" Kara lunged, but it was too late. The water boiled as something dragged him under, but not before his camera, still recording, caught a flash of pale, humanoid faces just beneath the surface. The shocking twist. As the crew scrambled, Sophia grabbed Vance's arm, her voice desperate. "You don't understand. My family didn't send ships here. We lured them to keep it from coming ashore." Mateo's scar burned blue. "Too late," he choked. It's not hunting us anymore. It's hurting us. Behind them, the ocean parted. Something ancient. Something hungry. And it wasn't alone. Chapter 3. The Changed. The ocean fell unnaturally still as the marlin drifted in the suffocating fog. Finn was gone. The creature had vanished, but the crew knew it was watching. Then, the radio crackled again. A new voice, Finn's voice, but warped, wet, wrong. Guys, you need to see this. 1. Finn's transformation. 3 hours later, Finn's camera washed up on a debris field 20 miles away, still recording. The footage showed Finn alive, but his skin was translucent, veins pulsing blue. Gills slit his neck. His eyes were black from edge to edge. The last frame? Him smiling at the camera, whispering, "It's so much better down here." He wasn't drowned. He was upgraded. 2. The Keepers of the Deep. Mateo's scar burned hotter. "They're not monsters," he gasped. "They're caretakers." Leon pulled up sonar images, dozens of humanoid shapes circling beneath them. Not creatures, people, or what was left of them. Flight 19, Vance realized. The lost ships, the missing crews. They didn't die, they were recruited. Kara's prosthetic leg suddenly hummed, reacting to some unseen frequency. "Oh my God, it's not just the water. Metal calls it too." 3. Sophia's betrayal. Sophia backed toward the lifeboat, a serum-filled syringe glinting in her hand. "I tried to warn you," she said, voice shaking. "But the deal's the deal. One life from millions." Then gunfire. A masked mercenary emerged from the shadows, rifle trained on Mateo. "Sorry, kid," the assassin muttered. "You're the package." 4. Sophia's childhood trauma. Sophia's eyes welled with tears as she revealed the truth. At age 8, she'd survived a yacht accident that killed her parents. She'd been pulled from the water by something that wasn't human. It spoke to her, made a pact with her family. "Bring us the marked one," it had said, "or we come ashore." Mateo was the sacrifice. 5. The hired killer's mission. The mercenary wasn't just hired to kill. He was hired to deliver. His employer? Dr. Vance. "You son of a bitch!" Kara snarled. Vance adjusted his glasses, cold. "You think I chase legends for science? The Pentagon pays billions for what's in Mateo's blood." The escape. As the mercenary fired, the creature struck. A tentacle speared through his chest, yanking him into the depths. Sophia lunged for the lifeboat, but the water reached for her, pulling her under with a scream. Then, from the darkness, Finn's voice echoed. "Join us!" The cliffhanger. With the ship collapsing around them, Mateo grabbed Leon's hand. His scar was spreading. "It's not a curse," he whispered. "It's an invitation." Behind them, the ocean opened, and something ascended. Chapter 4. The Light Between Monsters. The sea wasn't water anymore. It was a living, breathing membrane, rising and falling like some great leviathan's chest. The marlin listed violently as the thing beneath them. No, the thing circled closer. Mateo's bioluminescent scar pulsed in time with their movements, casting ghostly blue light across the terror-stricken faces of what remained of the crew. Then the radio screamed to life again. 1. Vance's true mission. A game of gods. Vance wasn't running toward the lifeboats with the others. He stood at the helm, frantically typing into a military-grade satellite device hidden in his bag. "You knew," Kara snarled, grabbing him by the collar. "This whole time you knew." Vance's glasses reflected the storm as he smiled. "Of course I did." The truth detonated like a depth charge. Project Looking Glass. A Cold War-era Black Ops program that discovered acoustic frequencies capable of summoning entities from the Triangle. Vance wasn't a disgraced scientist. He was a contractor, hired to weaponize whatever was down here. "They've been trying to replicate Mateo's condition for decades," he hissed. "Controlled evolution. Soldiers who can breathe underwater. Think of the applications." Then a new voice crackled over the radio. "Marlin, this is USCGC Hammerhead. Hold position for extraction." "A Coast Guard ship? Here? Now?" Something was very, very wrong. 2. Kara's prosthetic leg, a gift from the deep. Kara's prosthetic leg vibrated violently, the titanium alloy humming as if resonating with something beneath the waves. She collapsed, screaming as the neural interface flashed with corrupted data. Images flooded her mind. A lighthouse. Not on any map. Built from black coral and human bone. Herself, years younger, bleeding out on some forgotten beach. A figure emerging from the surf, pressing a strange metal into her wounds. "You'll serve better this way." "It's not a leg," she gasped. "It's a beacon." And whatever was coming recognized its own. 3. The marked ones. An army of the changed. Matteo convulsed as his scar split open, revealing not blood, but bioluminescent tendrils. The crew watched in horror as similar scars began glowing beneath their skin. They'd all been marked, they just hadn't known it. Leanne tore at her sleeve. "Oh God, I have one too." A faint spiral on her wrist, nearly faded. From a childhood beach trip she barely remembered. "How many of us are there?" she whispered. The answer came from the waves. Dozens of figures broke the surface. Men, women, children, some half transformed, others eerily human. All watching. All waiting. Finn stood among them, his black eyes unblinking. "You don't drown here," he called. "You ascend." 4. False salvation. The ship that wasn't. The hammerhead loomed through the fog, its searchlights cutting across the Marlin's deck. No crew waved from the rails. No voices called out. Just silence. Then the hammerhead's hull split open, not with damage, but with something organic, like a flower made of rusted metal and pulsating veins. "That's not a rescue ship," Vance breathed. "It's a hive." 5. The monster didn't need people, it needed volunteers. The creatures that changed weren't attacking. They were offering a choice. Finn reached out a webbed hand. No more pain, no more fear, just evolution. Sophia's voice suddenly crackled from the water alive, but changed. "They don't take, they ask, and some of us say yes." 6. The lighthouse, the triangle's beating heart. Then, as if summoned by their realization, the fog parted. A lighthouse stood on the horizon, its structure impossible, built from shipwrecks, fused together like some grotesque coral reef. Its beam cut through the night, not with light, but with a sound that made their teeth vibrate. The source of the signal. The reason ships vanished. Not a warning. A call. The choice. The crew stood at the precipice. Kara, her prosthetic leg now fused to her flesh, pulling her toward the water. Leanne, her old scar burning, whispering, "What if they're right?" Vance, gripping his device, realizing too late he was never the one in control. Matteo, no longer afraid, stepping toward the railing. And then, the lighthouse's beam shifted. A voice, older than language, echoed in their skulls. "Come home." Chapter 5. The lighthouse at the end of time. The Marlin was gone. Not sunk, erased. One moment it groaned against the waves, the next, its rusted hull dissolved into the fog like salt in water. The crew found themselves standing on a black sand beach, the impossible lighthouse looming before them, its twisted spire pulsating with an eerie, non-light that cast no shadows. And then the voice came again. "You're late." 1. What waits inside the lighthouse? The door creaked open before they could knock. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and old blood. The walls weren't made of stone or metal, but compressed ship hulls, fused together like melted wax. And at the center, seated on a throne of anchors and human bones, was a man. Or something wearing a man's skin. His face shifted like smoke. One second a WWIE naval officer, the next a conquistador, then a face none of them recognized but all of them knew. "You can call me Keeper," he said, smiling with too many teeth. "And you've been expected." 2. The Pentagon's true endgame, a war for godhood. Vance's satellite device exploded in his hands, spewing holographic files the crew was never meant to see. Operation Neptune's Spear. Not a mission to study the triangle. A mission to harvest it. The Pentagon had known for decades. The deep wasn't just alive. It was intelligent, and it had tech or magic older than Babylon. They don't want to fight it, Leon realized. They want to become it. Keeper laughed, a sound like drowning sailors. Your masters are children playing with fire. They think they can steal what was never theirs. Then he snapped his fingers. 3. Kara's final mission. Betrayal or redemption. Kara's prosthetic leg moved on its own, dragging her toward Keeper. Memories flooded her real ones. She hadn't lost her leg in combat. She'd lost it here, and she'd volunteered. You were my eyes topside, Keeper whispered. You brought them home. Now finish it. The crew recoiled. Had Kara been leading them here all along? 4. Artifacts of the Drowned Kingdom. The lighthouse's lower chambers were a museum of madness. Atlantean glyphs depicting wars against sky demons. A golden compass that pointed not north, but toward fear. And worst of all, a mural of the triangle itself, not as water, but as a living, breathing entity. We were here first, Keeper said. Then your kind came with your ships, your bombs, your noise. 5. The memories that weren't there. Mateo screamed, clutching his head. Visions tore through him. Himself, but older, standing on this same beach, welcoming others. Leon, her body half transformed, leading an army of the changed. Vance, strapped to a table as something poured itself into his mouth. What is this? He begged. Keeper's grin widened. Not memories. Prophesize. 6. The portal. A door to worlds undrowned. Then the floor opened. Not a hole, a gateway. Through it they saw a version of the Marlin where Sophia was captain and Finn was the scientist. A skyline of black pyramids where Miami should be. Themselves, but different. Changed kneeling before Keeper in some gilded past. Time isn't a line here, Keeper whispered. It's a whirlpool. The choice. The crew stood at the precipice of understanding and annihilation. Vance reached for the compass, his eyes alight with greed. Leon backed away, her scar burning. We were never supposed to come here. Kara looked at her prosthetic, then at Keeper. What did you do to me? Mateo stepped toward the portal. I remember now. I volunteered too. And then the lighthouse screamed. Chapter 6. The Schism. The lighthouse's scream wasn't a sound, it was a fracture in reality itself. The crew collapsed as the walls around them peeled away like rotting skin, revealing the true structure beneath. A cavernous, pulsating chamber lined with thousands of glass cylinders, each containing a floating human figure. Some wore conquistador armor. Others, flight suits from the 1940s. One, a face they all recognized, Sophia. Her body suspended in glowing liquid, eyes wide open. The builders, Keeper whispered, gesturing to the tanks. The first who tried to leave. Now they serve differently. 1. Who really built the lighthouse? The truth unfolded in fragments of nightmare. The lighthouse wasn't a warning beacon. It was a prison. Built not by humans, but by them, the ones who came before. The ones who dug too deep and woke what should have slept. The cylinders weren't preservation tanks. They were batteries. Human minds powering the barrier, keeping the triangle's true horror contained. Leon pressed her hands against Sophia's cylinder. She's feeding it? Keeper's smile dripped with pity. You all are. 2. The Pentagon's final solution. A terror from the sky. Vance's mangled satellite device suddenly reactivated, projecting a classified Pentagon feed. A nuclear submarine positioned at the triangle's edge. Orders to detonate a chronivore device, a bomb designed not to destroy matter, but to erase time itself in a 50-mile radius. If we can't control it, growled the Secretary of Defense, we'll unmake it. Keeper laughed, a sound like breaking glass. They think fire can kill the ocean? 3. The other team. A world without light. The portal still flickered, showing the alternate Marlin crew in their final moments. Finn is a scientist, dissecting a changed corpse, screaming, "It's in the water supply!" Kara, with 2 flesh legs, piloting a plane into the lighthouse's beam. Sophia, unmarked and alive, whispering to an empty room. There was never a ship. We've always been here. Then the vision shifted. A version of the triangle without water, Just a crater, bottomless and black, with something moving in the dark. 4. The smuggler's secret, a human cancer. Beneath the lighthouse, they found a modern bunker. Inside, a submarine drone loaded with uncut diamonds. A ledger detailing accidents arranged for rivals. The disappearances weren't all it, Matteo realized. People used the legend to cover their crimes. Keeper's voice dripped with disgust. Your kind infect everything you touch. 5. The prophecy, and the Keeper's true role. Carved into the chamber's floor was a 13-0-year-old inscription. When the Keeper walks again, the sea will judge the land. The marked shall become the markers, and the false world will drown in its own lies. Leon traced the words. You're not the villain. You're the judge. Keeper's form flickered, revealing something vast and terrible beneath. I am what your sins made me. 6. The shattering revelation, a lie in the water. Then the world ripped. One moment they stood in the lighthouse. The next strapped to hospital beds, IVs in their arms, surrounded by doctors in quarantine suits. Dr. Rachel Silva, Chief of Psychiatry, Yale New Haven Hospital. You've been here for 17 months. There was no Marlin, no triangle. Just a shared psychotic break triggered by experimental schizophrenia medication. A screen played security footage. The crew, screaming about monsters, in a white room. Vance babbling about the Keeper as orderlies held him down. Kara's prosthetic Ligust, a normal prosthetic. It wasn't real, Dr. Silva said softly. But then Kara's forebag bubbled. The liquid inside swirled into a perfect spiral. And from the hospital speakers, a voice that wasn't human. Wasn't it? What do you think about this story? Write in the comments, subscribe, and wait for the next video, in which I will tell you about an equally shocking animal that surprised the whole world. If you don't subscribe, you will make a huge mistake.